Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first live stream for Beyond Viscaya. We are excited that you are here joining us. My name is Odine Monesteem, and I will be your host for today's session. Now, what is Beyond Viscaya, you might ask? Well, Beyond Viscaya is a community storytelling project that tells the stories of Miami. So, throughout the series, you will hear stories from historians, leaders, and everyday people. We will focus on three pillars throughout the series. They include migration, labor, and cultural identity. Now, today we will focus on migration, but before we do that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the space that we are streaming from. We are streaming from the Viscaya living room. Now, the living room is considered to be the largest room in the entire house, and it is also where we have our organ. Our organ is actually still played today. No, we do not have an actual person playing the organ, but it's set up on an automatic player where visitors can actually hear between the hours of 4 p.m. and 4:30. Now, back to our special guest for today. We do have a guest with you today, and I'd like to go ahead and introduce him. Today, we have with us Florida State Senator Shevrin Jones. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you so much. How you doing, Odine?
I'm doing well, and we're happy to have you with us. You're launching our live streams, so it's a big honor. Thank you for that.
I appreciate it. It's a lot of pressure to be the first.
Yeah. And so, as we mentioned, today's focus is going to be on migration, and we understand that you have a personal story with migration. And so, we'll go right into our very first question. And the first question I have for you is, what is your migration story or your family's migration story?
I appreciate that. So, like I shared with you in the beginning, my parents, my grandparents, my grandfather, to be exact, everyone's from the Bahamas. I've been doing ancestry and come to find out that my family is actually from England. So they migrated from England to Bahamas where my family they stayed in the Bahamas since the 1800s is where they were. The island where my family was from is from, excuse me, is called Cricket Island. Cricket Island is a island that's only 13 miles long, and in this 13-mile long island, them and other families, the Fergusons and others, were a part of building this island up to what it is today. And then from there, my family moved over to Nassau. They moved over to Marsh Harbor. And from there, my grandfather moved from Cricket Island. He was the only one who stayed there with my great grandmother and my great grandfather. And they moved. He moved to the states to help Henry Flagler build the railroads. And him and my grandmother moved to Key West. I mean, moved to West Palm Beach first, where they resided. And over the years, after they continued building the road, they moved to Hollywood where it was called Hollywood at that time, but then they turned it into Hollandale, and then from Hollandale they moved to Cabo Ranches, where a lot of Bahamians. It is the one place where Bahamians migrated in Broward County, and it's now called West Park. But that was our migration story from England to Bahamas to the states, and to the states. When we came over to the states, it was because of my grandfather.
Right. Very interesting because your story ties directly to Miami. And then even with trying to tie it back to Viscaya in particular, um, the houseman, the actual individual that took care of the home for over 50 years while James Deering was here, he's from Nassau, Bahamas. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I
Yes,
didn't.
you guys definitely have that in common. And it goes to show that so many people from Miami can relate to this specifically, migrating over from another country and to be here today.
Yes.
Yes. And I'm curious, how would you culturally identify? Because I know sometimes, depending on how many generations back, it's just weird how people tend to identify. But how do you go about that?
Yeah, I culturally identify as African American, but I always tell people that I said I'm African American with a Caribbean background because my father is from from Nassau, Bahamas, and usually when I say that, it starts a larger conversation that we have when people want to know where you're from. I mean, where's all of your family from? And I'm sure we're from more islands than just Nassau, Marsh, Freeport, and all those other areas. Because I know we do have family that's in Eleuthera, and all over Bahamas. So I identify as African American with a Bahamian, a Caribbean background.
Okay, definitely understood. And what I want to ask you, you mentioned a particular place in Broward that's known to have a concentration of,
Hmm.
people that are from the Bahamas, and then even here in the Coconut Grove area. If you want to talk about West Coast Coconut Grove, there are a lot of Bahamians that are
Oh
still
yes,
there. Yeah,
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
it's funny because not many people are aware of why that is. And
Yeah,
so I wanted to ask you, do you agree? Do you feel as if maybe more should be shared in terms of migrants' contribution to Miami, Coconut Grove, just in general?
absolutely. I think what people don't understand is that there would have been no Miami. There wouldn't have been a railroad if it wasn't for the great migration of a lot of Bahamians who came here back in the 20s. Carver Ranches, which is in Broward County, where a lot of Bahamians migrated to, was an area that they migrated to because of the land that was there and how cheap the land was. My grandfather was able to get the property that my grandmother, she's God bless her soul, that house they bought that land for $15, and that house that my father now owns. And there were other areas that within Carver Ranches where people reside, and they bought land for cheap. But when you look at Coral Gables the same way. It even looked like Nassau if you go to the Gables, right? You see the houses that are sitting high and the porch that's screened in. That's Bahamas in its all infinite way. And so, of course, there everything that we see now, we have to give a shout out to the Bahamians who migrated here because they played a big role in building it.
Right, right. I agree. And we already agree that at the fact that it's important to have that knowledge. But even with speaking to you, I can tell that just having that background and knowing it brings a level of pride in who you are
Hmm.
today.
Yes, it does. Oh, listen, I'm the one thing I take pride in being Caribbean, being from the Bahamas, because there's one thing sure about Bahamians that we are very happy of our homeland. Period.
Right. Yeah. And even on a personal note, my mother, she's from the Bahamas. She's actually from Nassau as well. Um, I don't really know a lot about Bahamian culture. I was more so raised in the Haitian culture because there's a migration there
Hey,
too with
that's
Haitians and
right.
Bahamians. Yes, yes. But yes, I do have that background as well. And with being at Viscaya, it's taught me a lot. It really has. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm happy that you're doing this because I think we don't talk about this enough, and we should. Even look what after the storm, after the hurricane last year. The one thing I kept making mention of is us taking care of our Bahamian neighbors because it is true. Our Bahamian brothers and sisters contributed so much. In Florida, we owed it to them to show them love and support and helping them get back on their feet.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you whether or not this was something that comes up with maybe some of your constituents, just having these types of conversations, just to understand, all of the contributions. Do you find yourself talking about that with various people?
Well, I do. I do find myself talking to various people, but the conversations sometimes get missed, right? Because I mean, we don't talk about it enough, and should I say, and we should, we should spend more time talking about our history because how much of this will be lost if we don't begin to pass this down to generations to come, and so we have to be very intentional about talking about our history, talking about our heritage, talking about how Miami was built, because it's just important information that we should forever be reminded of.
Right, right. I definitely agree. And then I want to kind of tie it back to what cultural identity, I guess, means on a whole. We talked about how we can always correlate ethnicity and race to cultural identity, but culture can just mean how you identify in general in different ways. So, for example, the interior designer for Viscaya, he was actually openly gay. We talked about how Eustace Edgecombe was of Bahamian descent. And the big deal behind those things is at that time when James Deering was alive, the Jim Crow era is, during the time that he lived in. So for his houseman to have been a black man, a black immigrant, that was a big deal. And then during that time as well, people didn't openly identify as gay. And for his interior designer to identify in that way, another big deal. And so for you, for someone that embodies both, I want to know for you, how do you reflect on that in terms of what it means and how far we've come as maybe a community, as a people? Do you reflect on things like that?
I do. I look at how far we've come, and I also look at how far we still have to go. And I'm learning. Thurgood Marshall said something in one of his speeches at, I think, I can't remember what university it was, and he said we have to acknowledge how far we have come because we're not where we used to be, and it's such a true statement. And I always recognize that. And even myself, as I sit in the Senate as the first openly LGBTQ person to take office in the Senate in the state of Florida, I look at those type of glass ceilings being broken to that paved the way for other individuals to be able to say, if he did it, then I can do it. Or I mean, but we still have work to do. We still have people that's out there who are who discriminate based off someone's sexual orientation, which has nothing to do with someone's leadership. And so all of that is our continuing process of what we need to do to educate people in the area of not being tolerant, because I don't want you to tolerate with me, but us being able to coexist in this place we call the world that we live in America.
Right, right. And I remember reading a Miami Herald article where you mentioned how you don't want to be boxed into these
No.
labels. You want to be known for, what it is that you can do and what you have accomplished and your track record,
Yeah.
which definitely makes a whole lot of sense. Yes. And thankfully, you have supporters. We see that. And some of your main supporters are your family.
My
And we
family.
wanted to, yeah, we wanted to share some of the photos that you've sent to us. And then as we do that, maybe you could kind of explain what we see in these photos and why
Yes.
they're so important to you.
Uh, that's my mom and my dad. And that's up top at my campaign kickoff. And the second one is all of us with my oldest brother. Our middle brother died 3 years ago suddenly,
I'm
so we're
sorry to hear
just one
that.
person in that picture. But yeah, that's them. That's my mom. That's my heart. And we were laughing about something because she said she was hot.
It's a
and, we were
beautiful
doing, and
photo.
we were doing a photo shoot. That's our mom. She's holding an obituary of our brother. That was the first Christmas without him.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a picture of my mom. She had never been to the Capitol. When I was sworn in 2012, she was in the hospital, so she couldn't come. So that was the first time she came.
Ah, yes, I know that meant a lot.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
That's my niece. That is Nakora. I have six nephews, and it's all boys. And my
Oh,
mom and my sister-in-law are the only girls. And February 7th last year, she was born. She just celebrated her first birthday. She's my heart. She's on my screensavers and everything. She's so spoiled.
yes, I was going to say, I bet she's spoiled.
Oh, she's spoiled. These are my nephews. They go everywhere with me. As a matter of fact, the one in the front seat, he's in school here. The one in the back seat, he just graduated from high school. But both of them are up here now because I brought the one in the back seat up with me yesterday, and I'm taking them to dinner tonight. So they
They definitely seem to look up to their uncle.
do. I love them. This is my partner Matthew and myself, and that's our dog Tito's.
Matching pajamas.
Yes.
Nice. But thank you for sharing those photos with us. And what we want to do is also give our viewers the opportunity to ask any questions pertaining
Okay.
to migration or anything that we talked about today.
Okay.
And so we'll kind of go through some of those and then you can kind of share your responses. And so we'll give it a couple of minutes. All right. So the first question, what made you want to become a politician?
I was a teacher at Everglades Senior High School. I was young. I was 21, 22 years old as an educator. And I had just came out of college, so I was still on my social justice tip. Uh, and I was so upset with how teachers were being treated. And so I'll never forget, we were in a meeting one day, and I asked the principal, I said, "Who keep changing the rules? We just changed the rules last year, and now the rules have changed again." And he literally says to me, it's the politicians." I said, "I'm gonna run for office." So I ran for office. And so I always live by the saying that if you to run for office, you have to be mad as hell about something. I was mad as hell.
Mhm. I see. Makes yeah, I get it. I totally get it, especially with you having that education background.
Yes,
You understand. Yeah.
yes.
All right. So our next question: what are your favorite parts of South Florida or Miami?
Ooh. My favorite parts of South Florida, I kid you not, is our although people might not think so, but I really enjoy my weekends like my family. So I enjoy nightlife. So I like dinners and like lounges and things like that. I think we have a cool scene like the Wynwood area. Those areas are great, and we have up and coming areas. I have to give a shout out to District 35. Miami Gardens is thriving right now. So I'm that those are my areas.
Cool. All right. And do you ever visit the Bahamas?
I have not been to the Bahamas in 3 years. My parents, we own. When my grandfather passed away, he before he passed away, he purchased 17 acres of land for $5 back in the 1930s.
Mm,
Gave that land to my dad. My dad never did anything with it, so now my dad just gave the land to my brother and I. So we're going to be going over there to do some work over on the property on those 17 acres in the next few weeks.
when you mentioned nightlife earlier, I'll just throw in one more question in there. Have you found any spots or maybe even restaurants that have really good Caribbean food that you frequent?
Lorna's
Okay.
in Miami Gardens.
Nice. And do we have any more questions? No? Okay. All right. So I want to be able to direct people in terms of if they have any story ideas or if there's anything that they.
We have one more.
Oh, we have one more question. All right. So, how would you start the immigration process to come from the Bahamas? So, that looks like someone that is either maybe in the Bahamas or maybe they know someone and they just want to ask you if you know the best way to start that immigration process.
If you to start the immigration process, you should definitely have someone here within the states to start the process for you, for them, or for you to start your paperwork. Or even if the person, I mean, there's an agreement with the Bahamas and the United States, so you can freely come over here to the state to go to the immigration office to do whatever paperwork that you need to do in order to either to do citizenship or to do dual citizenship. You can go to the immigration office, and I think it's one in South Miami.
Okay. All right. And so, one question that I have here what types of policies, bills, or legislation in general are you currently working on?
I'm working on quite a few. I have quite a few bills up next week, but I'm working on the internship tax credit, which gives tax credit to businesses if they hire interns after they serve in their companies. I have a bill that's pertaining to calling out white nationalism and white supremacy in the state of Florida, letting it be known that the state of Florida does not stand by the white supremacy or white nationalism. I also have a bill that speaks to incarcerated pregnant women that at booking that the county jails have to ask the woman if she's pregnant or not, and that avoids any mishap with our women who are not being medically taken care of, and because we have failed to ask the question and they're pregnant.
Right. Okay. And then I understand that we have another question that is coming in. So Okay, it's right here. So, how hard was it to become a politician? Would you go through it again if you had to? So, I guess that whole process.
You have to build coalition. I mean, listen, people think just putting your name on the ballot is what you have to do. Yeah, anyone can run for office, and that's fine. But you have to be willing to build a coalition to get people to go along with you. No one's going to follow someone who doesn't have a plan. So was it difficult? It was difficult, because you're dealing with so many different ideas, and so many people have what they believe a community should look like, and you have to figure out how can you incorporate what your belief is, what their beliefs are, and make it something to will make it whole, right? Will I go through it again? Absolutely. I don't just say this because it's a talking point. Like, I'll fight all day for people, because I wasn't raised in a family with a bunch of politicians. My dad went into politics while I was in college. Um, and my dad's a pastor, and I've seen how he worked tirelessly serving people. So it's in my blood to serve people, and will I do it again? If 100%.
Okay. And then one last question before you go.
That's fine.
What is one thing going on in Tallahassee that you would like to bring attention to, or that you would like our viewers or the people to know about? You could pick.
House Bill 1, the anti-rioting bill that the governor is pushing forward, is a bill that's not needed. I think people have the right to protest. You can't tell people how to protest. We did that before. We did that with the apartheid. We did that for the civil rights movement. It's been done before, and it never plays out well. And so in 2021, we should not be telling people how to protest.
Right. Okay, well, Senator, thank you so much for, first of all, taking this time out to be with us and sharing your personal story of migration, and then also bringing some important things to our attention, some things that are going on. Thank you so much for that. And what I want our viewers to know is, in order to be able to follow us or receive more content, you can do that by visiting viscaya.org/Beyond Viscaya. And what we want to do is let you all know that we're also partnering with History Miami. And if you go through that site in partnership with them, you'll be able to submit your own stories that focus on migration, labor, and cultural identity. Our next live stream is going to be on March 23rd. We'll have Dr. Marvin Dunn, who's been the author of books such as Black Miami and the history of Miami, Florida through the Black eyes. And thank you so much again. We look forward to continuing on with this journey of Beyond Viscaya with you all. All right. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye.